Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Had one of those nights, just let's put it that way. The key of destiny. I didn't realize how tiny the last labor is because I left off on 11. So I'm going to read the 12 labor and then we're going to hit on number 13. Yay. Before I do so, please hit that like. Please share. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a light bulb, an epiphany, a mic drop moment, a new book to read, I connected a dot for you, please consider supporting my work. The information is in the drop box below. In some videos I already stated, this is most likely my last month that I will have internet for a while, a working phone. I won't have electric or gas. Yeah. Things are really bad. I can't afford my bills. And I want to continue doing this, but I can't if I can't pay my bills. They'll just shut me off. I'm looking at different avenues, but I can use all the help that I can get right now. So please consider doing that. It would be very appreciated. The 12th labor, Capricorn, carrying Cerberus from Hades. Hercules, remember guys? In the foregoing labors, Hercules has shown his strength and supremacy by conquering every phase of earth conditions. But there was still one realm of nature as yet unconquered, namely the underworld, generally called hell. And thither he was sent on his last mission. This task was to conquer and bring back the hellhound Cerberus. Again, that's another name that I can't project properly. This dog guarded the gates of the lower world. He allowed all to enter, but seized all who attempted to return or escape. He was the offspring of Typhoon and Echidna. He had 3 heads, a terrifying bark and tail of a serpent, while out of his body grew a mane and tangled serpents. In this dog, we find a symbology closely akin to the terrible goat of Mendes. Before attempting this task, Hercules had to be purified from all his sins and initiated into the mysteries of Ulysses. And again, I'm not saying that right. As with all sun gods, the final step of initiation is the descent into hell to minister to the spirits imprisoned there. So with Hercules, his first act was to release Theseus from the bonds which held him there. Then he overpowered Menoetos, the herdsman of Hades, kin, namely the evil genius who herded and fed the inhabitants on evil by stimulating their evil passions. Hercules then killed one of the cattle. One of the lower animal passions indulged in that awful realm and appeased the gibbering shades with its blood, so as to direct them away from those they were tormenting. Cerberus was on guard, but Hercules, protected by his lion skin and his breastplate of divinity, cautiously approached the beast and suddenly grasping him by the head and neck, forced him to submit. The labor agrees with the sign of Capricorn, for in the sign we find the awful goat of Mendes, the mystic guardian of hell, in the form of a black magic symbol. but we also find that in it the Christ man is born, as every initiate was said to be when he rose on the third day, as did Hercules from the tomb of the underworld. Also, Hercules brought Cerberus out and up into the light of day, thus providing, as we have already explained, the goat of Endes is not the devil, nor is the dog. Cerberus, in power of the Christ, both can be conquered and made the friends of man who has accomplished the Sun initiate. That closes out Hercules. Hercules! Very interesting. I'm actually more of a Norse mythology person. Very similar to Greek. It is almost uncanny how Odin and Hercules are like the same entity. Different things for sure, but there's a lot of similarities there. The evil number that we have to take back, which was never evil in the damn first place, number 13. The Manifestor of the universe. Here we go. Quote, the sun and the 12 signs of the zodiac may well stand as symbols of the master and his 12 disciples, but they will not suffice for the historical fact. For that fact is not limited to a drama in which 13 characters were at one time employed. It is a drama that is playing through all time, in all places, and among all people. Cosmic symbolism, Sepharel 11:12. Number 13 is a number with unsavory reputation, but since the occult rule is that every seeming evil is but a perversion, distortion, or misinterpretation of something good, it just said it. Let us seek in this so-called unlucky number 13 for its true meaning or soul, and thus help to dispel the incrustations of evil thought, which ages of ignorance, superstition, and misunderstandings have built around it. First, we must determine upon what basis of thought or fact its evil reputation is founded, and correct any misunderstanding that may be discovered. Guys, 13's a good number. It's a good number. It's a good number. It's one of my lucky ones. How to fix my teeth there, guys. They're really annoying. The superstition that if 13 persons sit down to eat together, evil will surely befall the 13th. Many persons claim to have been justified, but no matter how ridiculous the superstition, it is believed in by a great many people for a great many years. The united thought force of all its believers will form a nucleus of force around which will gather a great army of elementals whose power will be exerted to fulfill the dominant thought expressed. In some cases, the result is due to the thought forces directly. In others, to the elementals who are helping to make manifest the desires of man. This is one of the secrets of the power, either for good or for evil, given to certain ideas, superstitions, and even inanimate objects, such as a talisman. The elementals are conscious yet mindless natural forces, which help to build up, materialize, and manifest and form the ideal prototypes in the divine mind, as well as in the mind, thoughts, and desires of man. They blindly follow the attraction of man's thoughts, much as iron fillings move across a paper when attracted to and following the lines of force of a magnet. However, the elementals are in various stages of their own evolution, from mere centers of elemental consciousness, having only latent intelligence, up through the various grades to the fairies, brownies, elves, natural sprites. Under certain conditions, they tend to obey blindly either the conscious command or the persistent thought of man, doing good or evil with equal promptness. These forces are therefore man's most potent allies in bringing to pass that which he thinks clearly and definitely and wills strongly. Thus, the greater the number of persons who hold the same thought, the more powerful it becomes. Pausing right there. So if everybody were to want and put out into the ether that all of us deserve prosperity and abundance that defines everybody, wouldn't everybody stop killing each other, destructing the world? Just a thought. Because if more people thought that, it would manifest. That's my complete point in almost all the videos I do. Insane. It is these elementals who give much of the mystical power to spells, omens, charms, etc. It is also through these agencies that evil thoughts of man are taken up and embodied in the lower forms of life, making many of them antagonists to men. In this way, number 13, in many cases, has really brought about just what man has for all ages believed is possible. Hence, if 13 persons sit down to a table and one or more fear the serious consequences, will result to one of their number the end of the year, the one who fears most or whom the thoughts of all are connected, will at least be subjected to the forces generated and directed toward him by the 12. And if he opens his aura through the door of fear, he is likely to suffer in proportion. The origin of this superstition is supposed to date back to the early Christian era, being connected in the popular mind with the fate of Judas Iscariot after his betrayal of Jesus at the Last Supper, although this idea did not become prevalent for several centuries, as nothing was written about the death and betrayal of Jesus until about the 3rd century. Yips! Yet the thought that the 13th person at the table will be a victim of the power of Judas' betrayal is nevertheless often true. For the more strongly such a thought is held, especially if it be coupled with fear, the paralyzing force which literally breaks down the protecting force of common sense, the more deadly will it be. But it is never Judas, that the betrayer, who is the one affected, but the 13th, or the symbolic master in the midst of his 12 disciples. Some students of mythology trace the origin of this belief back to the Scandinavian myth of their sun god Balder, who was killed by an arrow from the bow of the god Loki. While the 12 great gods sat around the table feasting, it takes but little thought to see that this is but a Scandinavian expression of the universal sun myth, the round table at which the 12 great gods were seated being the circle of the zodiac, and Balder, the 13th, who is killed, the sun in the center, while Loki, the slayer, is the power of darkness, striking or killing the light and strengthen the sun during the shortest day of the year. This is indicated by the fact that he is representing as using an arrow made of mistletoe, which in all ancient legends is connected to the shortest day and longest night of the year. That's not how that went. The mistletoe didn't express its love for Boulder. And it wasn't really Loki that killed his Boulder. It was a blind person that Loki handed the arrow to. So inadvertently, Loki helped aid kill Boulder, but he didn't actually do the act. Sneaky, sneaky. But before citing the corroborations of this idea in other sun myths, let us examine the reason for the conception, considering it from the standpoint of its fundamental numerical symbology. As we have explained in the Key to the Universe, the numbers from 1 to 9 represent the unfoldment of the faculties and the acquiring of the experience during a certain cycle, which is completed in 10. Each recurrence of 10 having within it a repetition of the same digits, but with the power of the previous cycles of 10 added. Therefore, to gain a true conception of the meaning of the numbers above 10, we must carefully consider the meaning of the digits composing them together with the number derived by their occult addition and blend and harmonize the meaning of all. Thus 13 equals 10 plus 3 equals 13 and 1 plus 3 equals 4, or 13 represents a complete cycle 10 of divine 3 manifested on earth 4, or the Christ has completed his descent into the matter 4 and sits at the table of the zodiac in the midst of his 12 disciples. Number 13, therefore, contains the power of the 3 elements. Through the power of the one life, 1, it blends the divine 3 with the terrestrial 4, the foundation stone, or the divine manifesting in matter. Verily, to call this number evil or unlucky is to make of it the stone which the builders rejected. It is evil only because of man's misunderstanding and unwise use of the divine heritage and power which it symbolizes. Fundamental meaning of number 13 is the manifestor of the universe. Since the divine cannot be fully expressed in matter in less than 12, I want to say that's 12 squared, but I really can't see that, guys. The true symbology of 13 is that of the sun, which to the zodiac is the one life, or number 1, and the 3 of the Trinity manifesting in its fourfold aspect through the elements of earth, air, fire, and water, and producing the foundation of the manifested universe. In other words, number 13 symbolizes the sun in the center of the 12 signs of the zodiac as the manifestor of the physical universe. As above, so below. Just as the divine dot manifests within the circle as the creator God, so does the physical sun in the center of the circle of our solar system manifest as the source of the light, life, and intelligence to all its attendant planets. And just as the forces poured out by the dot bring to fruition and redeem all its creation, as all saviors are represented as cycling, giving their lives or shedding their symbolic blood, spiritual life force, for the redemption of their followers, so does the sun, the dot in the center of our circle or zodiac, shed its blood or pour out its life force, that all nature might not perish but have more abundant during its cycle, or reach perfection and be redeemed in its number 10. We therefore see that the 12 signs of the zodiac with the sun, 13, and the center of the fundamental basics for all myths of creator and savior God. Wow. Good thing I chose 13 as my lucky number. Yep. Number 13, the Savior God. Quote, if it is once shown that every true adept had and still has to pass through the 7 and 12 trials of initiation, and that the trials of all these personages are made to correspond with the esoteric significance of initiatory rites, all of which correspond to the 12 zodiac signs, then everyone will see the meaning of the travels of all those heroes through the signs of the sun in heaven, and that they are in each individual case a personification of the sufferings, triumphs, and miracles of an adept before and after his initiation. Then also the mystery of all those lives, so closely resembling each other that the history of one seems to be the history of another, become plain. End quote. The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky. Before I even move forward, I found the PDF I could read of The Secret Doctrine. I'm so excited. I'm going to be doing a video. I know, like the worst timing, that I finally found a version I could read to everybody. While it is the accepted theory among mythologists and higher critics of the Bible that the physical sun is the basis of all sun myths, and that its journey around the zodiac is the basis for the incidents in the lives of every divine incarnation or sun god, and while the incidents in the lives of all are almost identical and coincide with remarkably with the events of the zodiac, yet we would explain this coincidence from the opposite point of view. We maintain that instead of the life story of Jesus and other saviors being a mere personification of the natural phenomena occurring during the sun cycle of the year, both are exemplifications of one of the same universal law, the loss of cycle manifestation. In other words, because the sun is the light bearer and self-sacrificing savior in nature, it exemplifies the same unfoldment in the physical life of the universe that every divine light bearer or savior of man exemplifies in the unfoldment of his spiritual life. The unfoldment of both follows the same stages, not because one is a copy of or a personification of the other, but because both are expressions of the same law, one in the physical world, the other in the spiritual. Therefore, as mystics, instead of being disturbed by the proofs of the higher critics that certain events in the life of Jesus and of other personages in the Bible did not take place historically, or else took place at a time or place far removed or under quite different circumstances for those related, we accept the facts of the criticism where proved, but still are able to correlate them with the Bible narrative as we find it. For instead of turning our backs upon or closing our eyes to the many historical and other discrepancies in the Bible, we set to work to find why they were so used and to find out the inner mystical and symbolic meaning of the very discrepancies themselves. For a true mystic never refuses to face any problem, knowing that all are but various expressions of a few fundamental laws. Instead of the discrepancies discrediting the Bible, they go to prove its mystical origin and occult significance, for only a truly inspired writer could make apparent discrepancies pregnant with true mystical meaning. All life must be the unfoldment brought about through unvarying universal laws of the one grand cosmic plan. Especially do we see this in the unfoldment of the mind of men. Hence, when a careful study of actual history reveals the fact that men in all ages who have devoted themselves to the solution of God's plan have such uniform conclusions and have sought to express them in a common way, namely through the symbology of the sun and the zodiac, there must be a deep and truly scientific reason back of it, a reason which the enlightened minds, every race and nation, each following their own divine guidance, has grasped and borne witness to. Let us then supply here the universal rule for solving problems, which is turn it over and view the other side. The sun and the zodiac are of themselves the actual manifested result of a higher and more divine truth. The one eternal absolute creative God in the midst of his creations. The physical sun with its attendant planets is a material expression of the one eternal Godhead, while the zodiac is but the limiting body in which it, sun, must do the will of him who sent it forth. Therefore, while these heavenly bodies are wonderful and most sacred to humanity, they are but one reflection in our universe of that which is far more sacred. Hence, it is not merely the sun in its annual journey, which is depleted in every sun myth and in the life of every light bearer or world savior, but the same divine word, the dot in the circle, which was in the beginning with God, and which is periodically sent out from the Father, even as a ray of the sun is sent forth periodically each day into nature. Yet in the case of a light bearer or sun initiate, such as Jesus, this light is the very essence of the Father, or the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Every age and every people must have such a shining forth of the glory of the Father, yet each light bearer is the only begotten in sense that he is of the essence of the spiritual sun, which must shine forth from age to age, just as the physical sun must send out its force year after year. Yet each reoccurring year, the light sent forth contains all the powers of the sun, although the sun itself is diminished. The life force in the seed is in a static or dormant condition and requires the application of fire, in this case from the sun's rays, or its static condition can be transformed into one of the kinetic activity and its sprout begin to put forth. We find this same law in the mineral kingdom as well, for the heat that is locked up in the coal remains in a static state until through the application of fire, it is turned into kinetic energy. And if we see this law manifesting in the mineral and vegetable kingdom, it must have a corresponding expression in all kingdoms. Hence, we may expect to find it in man. The great light bearers are expressions of the kinetic energy and activity of burning of the spiritual sun, and through the flame of divine love, they light the spark in the hearts of men, so that their dormant or static Christ force is turned into kinetic activity, and the Christ seed in their hearts begin to sprout. Thus, the sun and the zodiac form a perfect expression of the one law of manifestation back of all life. This life must therefore follow universal stages of unfoldment, and since we can only comprehend the infinite through his works, our finite minds recognize in the sun and the zodiac the symbol and exemplar of the great divine mystery of the manifested Godhead and universal law of manifestation, so exact and mathematically correct in every detail that it must be expression of a fundamental infinite truth, the manifestation of God in his works. Therefore, instead of the close correspondence between the recorded life of Jesus and the sun's journey through the zodiac being a cause for doubt of his divinity, in truth, it is a positive corroboration of it, nor need to be disturbed if we find many similar sons of God fulfilling the same law in former cycles. For taking the sun as the outpicturing of the great law of God, we find that the sun must shine forth with fresh vigor every year, that it may renew the life of all nature. If it shone but once and at the time give enough of its force to sustain nature for many cycles, years, say as long as this earth endured, then we would know that only once would God send his only begotten son to sustain all races of mankind with his spiritual shining. But as above, so below, this can not help being so, since the sun is but the record in the physical universe of a mighty event in the divine world. It is just like the writing of a teleautograph, which written by the eternal on high causes its reproduction in a physical universe. Therefore, the so-called higher critics have but stretched the surface of the truth and themselves confused by the multitudinous details of outer seeming, because they are ignorant of the soul of the motive power producing them. That the sun is the center of the zodiac is the fundamental meaning of number 13, as a cosmic symbol is evidenced by its universal use in all myths, which depict the cycle of manifestation of the sun god, no matter what the language, the people, or the age in which it is found. As Baldur was betrayed while he gathered the 12 great gods around him at a meet, and as Jesus was betrayed as he gathered his 12 disciples around the table at the Last Supper, so Helios, also the Greek sun god, the heavenly physician and savior, annually prepared the sun's table in nature, causing the fruit to ripen, the healing herbs to grow, and the inviting mortals to the life-saving repast. This table of the sun was always spread in the land of the happy and long-lived Ethiopians. Even the 12 gods journey thither each year with Zeus for 12 days in the last octave of the old and the new year. Again, we find that Jason, or Azios, is only a Greek form of the name Joshua, and Jesus of the Old Testament, who has been recognized as an ancient Ephraimitic god of the sun and fruitfulness. And just as Jason 13 sets out with the 12 companions to obtain the golden fleece of the lamb of Colchis, I'm not saying that right, just as Joshua 13 crossed the river Jordan with 12 followers and celebrated the Pasch lamb on the further bank, so Jesus 13 with his 12 disciples goes to Jerusalem at the Pasch in order to eat the Easter lamb there with the 12. It can scarcely be doubted that in all these cases we have to do with one and the same myth, the myth of the saving sun and rejoicer of peoples. It is evident that all these differing versions refer to the annual journey of the sun 13 through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Even the names Isios, Jason, Joshua, Jesus, also Vishnu, Genzu, and agree, and their common root is contained also in the name Jawi, from which Joshua is derived, the mystical name of Dionysus among the Greeks, as he roamed about in his capacity of traveling physician and redeemer of the world. It is as the God Son that he, Jesus, is surrounded by 12 disciples. It is as the sun God passing through the zodiac that he is represented successfully in art and lore by the lamb and the fishes, the beginning and the end of the zodiac. I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. The gospel story of the life of Jesus must therefore be looked upon not only as a new presentation of the world-old sun myth, but also as a mystical allegory representing both the stages of the unfoldment and manifestations of the spiritual sun, the cosmic Christ, in the heart of each soul, and also hiding within it the attestation to the divinity of Jesus as the Son of God, Son God, the only begotten of the Father. Since the events recorded are almost identical with the events in the lives of all former incarnations of the spiritual sun initiates, it is evident that all were expressing the same grand truth, that it as though many persons in different lands should recite an allegory depicting the events of a new springtime, the melting of the snow, the early growth and final blooming of the flowers, the bird songs. All would use their own metaphors and express it in their own languages, yet every nation, tongue, and people would recognize it in their description of spring and would thrill to the same truth. It's pretty true. Also, the events of the various narratives would all appeal to the human heart, because each heart would recognize that it, too, had its springtime, its cold rains and bitter winds, its warm sunshine, its new growth, and therefore ultimately must have its flowering and fruition. His personal application would in no way vitiate the truth of the various descriptions, nor would it make the springtime one iota less true and beautiful to know there had been others, or that other people in other parts of the world had described its events in slightly different terms. For every springtime is in nature the coming of the cosmic Christ, a new physical and historical manifestation of the universal sun myth, because it is a materialized expression of the great creative drama of divine manifestation, or the divine life manifesting in all worlds. Hence, it must have its expression in nature, as well as the unfolding life of man made in the image of the divine. This law was the basis for Hermes' axiom, as it is above, so it is below. I read that in the Kabbalion. For the accomplishment of this one purpose, the manifestation of the divine in all worlds. In the same way, every soul striving to follow the path of unfoldment must experience the events depicted in the life of Jesus, because all life must follow the same divine pattern breathed out in the beginning. For this reason, we can always find an analogy in every event in nature and apply its truths to man, because in its growth, development, and evolution, it is pointing the way for him. Its sad and dark days, as well as its happy ones, touch his heart, because he too is experiencing the corresponding states of joy and sorrow in his expression of the urge of the one life toward perfection. In fact, man and nature, the earth and the universe are all expressing, but the writing of the wonderful telautograph in the hands of the infinite, the one God. It is evident from the above, the sun myth could not have been evolved by primitive man observing the events of nature, for no primitive mind could grasp, much less accurately formulate so stupendous an allegory, and especially one which stand not only the test of philosophical examination and the experiences of life in all ages, but also the acid test of mathematics, the cold figures of astronomical and astrological calculations. The sun of righteousness, as it strives to manifest the light in each life, follows the same law we see exemplified in physical sun. Just as the physical sun at each new springtime awakens to life at what was seemingly dead, be it nourishing grain or noxious weed, so the spiritual sun in each heart into which a ray of the Christ light streams awakens into life and activity of the seemed dead or dormant in the circle of its life manifestation. For the real soul lessons of life must be learned through the process of quickening, redemption, by the spirit of life, or that which was mystically dead, and dead meaning dormant or not in manifestation, just as a latent planet is brought into manifestation and all its latent powers quickened by the descent of the light. The planet, the soul, and the seed are all sent forth to express the aspect of the divine ideal implanted with them. Hence, all follow the same steps in manifestation, obeying the universal law of unfoldment, evolution, growth, from within outward. The Last Supper is another symbol of the meaning of number 13. Although to be correct, the table should be a round one with a space for serving in the center. As used in ancient Rome and some Oriental countries, the significant words spoken on the occasion by the Lord of Light, this do in remembrance of me, have been little understood, for they did not merely mean that the followers of the Son of God were to drink wine and eat broken bread in remembrance of a cowardly betrayal and a cruel death, but that they were to look ever to the Christ for their spiritual bread and wine. If his followers would sit in a circle according to the seats of the 12 signs of the zodiac, with each one earnestly endeavoring to manifest the force of the sign in whose seat he sits, even if he was not born in the sign, and with all their hearts illumined by the radiance of the spiritual sun, or truly in remembrance of him who is the spiritual sun, that must shine in their hearts, they would surely be given to partake of the mystical food of which Jesus spoke when he said, I have meat to eat they ye know not of. Interesting. 13 is also very long, so I'm going to do one more section and then I'll end it for today. The number 13, necromancy. There are depths in man that go the lengths of lowest hell, as there are heights that reach highest heaven. For are not both heaven and hell made out of him, made by him, everlasting miracle and mystery that he is. Carlyle. Number 13 has a strong affinity for the astral world because when the forces from the 12 signs are perfectly blended in 13, the earth forces blend with their astral forces. Hence, only as we use the positive power of 13 or the power of the Christ within to conquer all that comes to us is 13 helpful. Otherwise, it is exceedingly dangerous, for it is negative aspect. It is the number of necromancy and evocation, whose power can draw to it subtle forces and entities from the astral world to be used for good or evil. In certain regions of the astral, there are forms which are but the discarded and disintegrating astral corpses left behind as empty shells by those souls who have passed from the lower realms of the astral into the higher psychic realms, just as the physical body is left behind as an empty shell when the soul leaves the physical world. These shells are composed of the astral body and lower principles minus the soul and life force. Although these corpses are slowly disintegrating, they last much longer than do physical corpses, and for a long time they may remain a semblance of life through the amount of karmic or lower desired principle still enmeshed in them, just as a physical corpse may retain an amount of life force sufficient to make the nails and hairs grow to a considerable length after burial. These shells are sometimes drawn magnetically into the aura of living persons through the practice of conscious or unconscious necromancy. When thus attracted, they automatically absorb from the living the forces of animal magnetism and desire which renew or prolong their shadowy existence. They are also often drawn into the aura of many spiritualistic seances when the sitters are of the more ignorant type. These are not the souls of the dead, but merely the shades of the dead, which the elaborate ritual ceremony and vital powers of the necromancer galvanize into a seeming life. They are not the conscious souls of our loved ones who have gone before us and with whom true and legitimate communion is possible when independent and legitimate methods are used. Therefore, let the students be careful not to confuse necromancy with the true and legitimate communion with the departed, as they have nothing in common. Often it is these empty shells which are clothed in the physical life forces and atoms thrown off by the medium and sitters at a seance, and thus becoming temporarily visible, or are said to materialize. This form of materialization, however, is real necromancy and is a perversion of the real materialization of the living astral body of the departed. Hence, it is not only a fraudulent appearance of the departed, but it is dangerous, foolish, and degenerating to the sitters as well as to the necromancer. It is this practice of evocation which the Bible and all spiritual teachers and philosophers condemn, and not the legitimate communion with the departed so frequently recounted and so plainly sanctioned in the Bible. The aspect of 13 is very unlucky, since it leads to nothing but falsehoods, glamour, and degeneration, either of the moral or faculties of the physical body, or both. But there are also other forms in the astral world, and to those whose spiritual growth has brought them step by step to this 13th gate, and who determine to receive the bread of life from the hand of the Christ alone, and who give the challenge, as we have explained it elsewhere, there is nothing to fear. For since man is not a mere puppet to be swayed against his will by conscious forces, once he has asserted his true manhood and has awakened the powers of the 12 aspects of the zodiac within himself, and has ruled them even in the slightest degree, he has sat at the round table and eaten and drunk with the Christ. And the Christ has proclaimed, "This is my body, limits of the zodiac, broken into 12 parts. For you take, eat, unless you eat my body and drink my blood, the spiritual life force, there is no life in you." Therefore, those who thus sit at the meat with the Christ and his 12 disciples know that all is well, even though there comes a time in their cycle of the sun when some aspects of force within them, the selfish desires of the personality, which dippeth with them into the dish, shall plunge them into the darkness for a season, just as the sun is annually plunged into the darkness of the longest night and shortest day of the year. They know that as followers of the light, they have the power of the Jesus man to rise from the tomb of this season and dormant power, winter, death, hell, triumphant in a new and radiant springtime. In fact, the incident of Judas dipping in the dish covers the whole question of man's endeavor to gain life force and knowledge in the illegitimate manner. For necromancy is a literal dipping of the hand power of accomplishment and of unregenerated man into the dish of divine life force, for which only the purified powers, hands, or the perfected Christ man, a true disciple, dares to take the bread and break it and give it to its disciples' faculties to eat. Necromancy is the perverted and degraded aspect of number 13, and is one reason why 13 is sometimes called Judas the betrayer. It is not 13, but man himself, who is the Judas, for he has betrayed the Christ within for 30 pieces of silver, the metal of the moon, symbol of the astral forces, and during a cycle of the threefold being, 3 times 10 equals 30, body, mind, and spirit. But when the betrayal is accomplished, then Judas in misery goes out into the darkness and hangs himself. The selfishness and darkness of an old personality will extinguish by the raising of the spiritual sun, and the Christ man may raise and partake of the one life in its threefold manifestation in body, mind, and spirit. This is the positive side of the picture, whose negative side humanity has for so many ages have been tracing in letters and blood upon the pages of history. Since out of the group of 13 there was but one Judas and 12 who stood fast, why should we ask, as did the disciples of Jesus, "Lord, are there few that be saved?" The eternal answer is, strive to enter in at the straight gate, laying emphasis upon the word straight, for all attempts to find the way through the devious paths of phenomena or of dabbing in evocations and necromancy are but crooked gates open into dark labyrinths of illusion. For only the light of truth, fed by the oil of pure devotion in a true heart and held aloft by the hermit we meet at number 9, can hope to find the way to safety. Yet even here is the Christ, for has not the psalmist said, "If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. Again, since the balanced force of the three gates or deacons of each sign, the good, the evil, and perfect balance between the two is in the center, it will be marked on a zodiac map by a straight line. Hence, that is the straight gate we must strive to enter in. In other words, we must receive the forces of all the 12 signs in straight or balanced lines, while 13 may be a danger point that can be passed only over in the strength of complete trust and fidelity, and the love that rests for all help upon the bosom of the Christ. Yet, having these, it is by no means unlucky. We find also number 13 is connected with the divisions of sidereal year, for in it we find 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, each embracing 13 weeks. Thus, number 13 is the mystical power of the manifestor of life, working in matter and changing the conditions from one season to another. The peak of familiar playing cards depends on numerical construction on 13, for in it we find the 4 suits of 13 cards following closely in symbology the 4 seasons of the year and their 13 weeks. The use of these cards in divination appears wonderful to the uninitiated, for in the hands of one who has learned to think mathematically and logically, one who has entered into the straight gate, the seemingly accidental numerical configurations of the cards after shuffling is a true key, not only to the thoughts and character of one handling them, but also a forecast of happenings to come, providing the events are close enough to be reflected in the person's aura. One of the most magical arrangement of numbers is this of number 13, 4 times repeated, although there are many, many other factors involved, such as colors of the suits, the shape of the figures, the shape of the symbols, and the fact that 52 cards equal the number of weeks of the year, which each equals 7. 52 equal 5 plus 2 equals 7. The number of days in the week, whenever number 13 is brought into prominence as at the end of a season of the year or suit of cards, it is like a magic mirror making a link between the astral world and the physical, because 13 is the gathering up of the force of the zodiac, hence is capable of reflecting the shadows cast both by thoughts and forthcoming events. The use of playing cards should not be amused, else it becomes a form of necromancy, for many fortune tellers use the cards as a means of invoking astral beings who are far more responsible for the shuffling of the cards and the predictions than any other factor. For this reason, one who is psychic is most successful as a card reader. The word psyche means soul, hence a psychic should be one who is conscious rapport with his own soul, the consciousness of his higher self, one who can respond to the inner guidance of the soul. But the word has become so perverted that today it is used almost exclusively to mean one who has merely developed one or more of his 5 senses to respond to the astral world, hence follows the guidance of mere astral entities instead of the divine guidance of his own soul. Truth be told. True. Those who have a passion for gambling are often in reality obsessed by disembodied gamblers and driven on their destruction just as surely as it is drunkard who drinks not alone to gratify his own desire for liquor, but to fulfill the abnormal lust for sensation of some debauched drunkard who, having passed out of physical life, is still the victim of drink craze and seeks to gratify his lust through the physical orgasm of a sensitive but negative character. Such astral entities are always congregate in great numbers around the sensitive who seeks to communicate with the astral by any means, save by the independent method of prayer, aspiration for the divine, or listening to the inner voice, that it may manifest in love within him as natural growth. And every negative opening of the center doors of the body and mind is apt to result in an inrush of obsessing entities. It should be noted here that the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was not built as a tomb, but as a repository of celestial measurements and proportions, covers approximately 13 acres, and that the entrance passageway opens upon the 13th tier of stones. Each side of the base measures 9,130 British inches, and 9 + 1 + 3 + 0 = 13. And we're going to leave it right there. All true, in my perspective, at least. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. I so much did. I love this book. Sending each and every one of you love and light. I hope you enjoyed that. If you can help me out in any way, it'd be appreciated. Until the next time, love and light, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.